So I want to talk with you for a moment and then shake the lulav and the etrog, and then make Kura service. As a motorcycle people keep going. I'm going to put my guitar down a moment. So I stand here. If you missed it at the very beginning, I'm at Har Hashem's drive-through sukkah, which you're going to hear all about and have an opportunity to drive through and be present at the synagogue in your car and in the sukkah, which is extraordinary and amazing. And I want to talk a little to you about Sukkot and a sukkah. So by nature, by design, these temporary booths that we kind of inherited from the story of our ancestors, that they were in booths as they left Egypt. These temporary booths are fragile. They blow with the wind. You know, we know by the end of the week, this will look more ragged. And that they're really, to me, this very deeply true symbol of how I feel at this time of year. We've made it through Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and I'll say I believe it's more than myself. I feel vulnerable and tired and fragile, just like a sukkah. And I think, I think that by design, there's so much wisdom in Judaism. We're in this vulnerable place, and we're in this vulnerable place, both internally and externally. And it allows us in a really special way to notice the bounty around us and to notice the harvest around us and ask ourselves, what is it that we harvest? Literally and figuratively, what is it that we harvest? And I'm deeply moved by standing here because in 2013, you probably recall, if you were in Boulder, Colorado, that there was a 1,000-year flood, and the synagogue was flooded. And it happened on the high holidays of 2013. And so Sukkot of 2013, I stood right here with sandbags all around the sanctuary, sandbags all around us. And again, here we are in what year is it? 5781, I know that one, I think it's 2020. We stand here again in a moment of fragility, floods, and now with COVID. And I am deeply moved by standing in the same place, in these two places in my life and in your life, if you experienced the flood and now, of course, COVID. And in this time of COVID, we deeply notice our fragility and our vulnerability every day, not just in Sukkot. It's something we're experiencing every day. We're having to figure out what this is all about and who we are and how we can be strong, and yet how we can also be open. And so all of this got me thinking about my favorite tradition at Sukkot. My favorite tradition is called Ushpizin. And it's this idea of welcoming guests, not sometimes literal guests, of course, we should welcome everybody, but in COVID, we maybe not. But this idea that we should welcome our ancestors, or we should welcome the idea of guests. So that it's one of my favorite traditions to ask people in my sukkah and say, who do you want here? Who do you want here? And someone says, I want Oprah Winfrey. I want Abraham Lincoln. I want, etc. That's my favorite tradition. And they say why. But it is traditional to have on different nights to invite different people specifically as ushpizin to our synagogue, to our sukkah. And so, sorry, there's someone walking. Okay. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the tradition and what that tradition asks us. So on the first night, we are supposed to welcome Abraham and Sarah, the primary exemplars of hospitality and welcoming. They teach us chesed, loving kindness. And it helps us ask, who are people that we might welcome more warmly into our communities? On the second night, we welcome Isaac and Rebecca, who teach us gevurah, strength. And we ask ourselves, when might it be best to sit back and subdue ourselves? And when is it important to take action for what we believe in? What are examples of actions that we can be taking in order to ensure a better future for all of us and for humankind? On the third night, we are to welcome Jacob and Rachel. And we ask ourselves, how can we ensure justice and equality for all with inclusion? Jacob and Rachel help us remember to welcome everyone, including all abilities, all colors, all peoples. On the fourth night, we welcome Yocheved and her son Moses. And we ask, today, who is struggling for their freedom? What is our responsibility to those people that are still struggling? On the fifth night, we welcome Miriam and her brother Aaron. And we ask, how do we use our speech, our lashon, our tongue, to hurt or demean others, or to make the world a better place? How can we use communication to create change? What are some specific ways we can raise our voices to speak out for social justice? On the sixth night, we welcome Joseph and his Egyptian wife, Osnat. And we say, what should our sense of responsibility and action be in light of our own wealth and power? Joseph gained this wealth and power in Egypt. And we've been asking ourselves as we're working at being an anti-racist synagogue, how do we use our own wealth and our own power to speak for others? And finally, on the seventh night of Sukkot, we welcome David and his wife, Michal. And David was a powerful leader who sometimes used his power for good. And I'm just saying, sometimes used his power for not so good. And so this night asks us to think about how our world leaders have the capacity to make war or peace, to use their authority to help others or to achieve personal profit. And how is it our responsibility to make sure they and we do what is right? And so the sukkah represents God's protection on life's pilgrimage. We're all on life's pilgrimage, and the sukkah literally represents that in all its fragility and vulnerability and, yes, wonder. So I ask you, who do you call? Who are your ushpizim? Who do you call upon for help? Who do you call upon for strength? Who do you call upon to know that you're not alone? And so with that, may we harvest our bounty for good.